The chamber was massive, carved from a single crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Tajian stood in the center, his hands clasped behind his back, his uniform pressed and perfect. Around him, 12 pedestals rose like mountains, and on each sat a representative of the elder races. They looked down at him with eyes that held no warmth. He had been speaking for 2 hours. His voice was hoarse, but he kept going. Behind him, Admiral Heywan sat with her jaw clenched, watching the alien faces for any sign of mercy. Next to her, young Kiwu held a recording device, his hand shaking slightly. This was history. Terrible history. "We have made mistakes," Taijin said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "Every species does. But we have also brought innovation, culture, and friendship to dozens of worlds. We have traded fairly. We have helped build stations and colonies. We ask only for a chance to prove ourselves further." The Vethray representative, a being of pure crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns, spoke without moving what might have been a mouth. Its voice came from everywhere at once. "You have taken 89 systems in 200 years. Your fleets move like locusts. Your people breed and spread without restraint. You are dangerous." Taijin felt his heart sink, but he tried again. "We expanded into unclaimed space. We harmed no one. Our growth is natural for a young species. Give us guidance, not punishment." A creature made of flowing gas, the Luminid Elder, shimmered in shades of yellow and orange. "We have guided younger races before. Those who listened prospered. Those who did not were contained. You do not listen. You push boundaries. You question our wisdom, because wisdom should be questioned," Taijin said, unable to stop himself. "That's how civilizations grow." The chamber fell silent. Even Heywan closed her eyes. That had been a mistake. The Korath, a mass of interconnected insect-like beings that moved as one, spoke in 1,000 tiny voices that merged into one sound. "You prove our point. You are too young, too reckless. The decision is made." Taijin looked at each of the 12 faces. He saw no sympathy, no doubt. They had decided before he ever entered this chamber. This was just theater. "Humanity is hereby restricted to your home system," the Vethray announced. "You have 30 cycles to withdraw all colonies, all ships, all presence from galactic space. Any human vessel found beyond the boundary will be destroyed. This is for the safety of all civilized species." The words hit like physical blows. 30 cycles. Less than 3 standard years. Millions of humans lived in the colonies. Families had been born out there, never seeing Earth, and now they had to abandon everything. "You can't do this," Heywan said, standing up. "We have children in those colonies. Elderly people who can't survive the journey. Infrastructure that took decades to build." "You'll manage," the Luminid said. "Or you will not. That is no longer our concern. The vote is unanimous. The sentence is final." Taijin wanted to shout, to rage, to demand justice. But he was a soldier and a diplomat. He straightened his spine and gave a formal bow. "Then humanity will withdraw. We will comply with your judgment. But no, this you are making a mistake. We could have been your friends. We do not need friends who threaten us by existing," the Korath said. The journey back to the human embassy was silent. Heywan stared out the viewport at the massive orbital station, where hundreds of species mixed and traded. Humans would no longer walk these halls. Kiwu reviewed his recordings, tears streaming down his face. Taijin just felt numb. Within weeks, the evacuation began. It was chaos. Transport ships that were designed to carry cargo were stuffed with families. People could only take what they could carry. Entire cities were abandoned in place. Heywan coordinated the fleet movements, working 20-hour days, barely sleeping. Every ship that made it back to Seoul was a small victory. Every ship that broke down or ran out of supplies was a tragedy. Kiwu documented everything. He recorded the faces of children who didn't understand why they had to leave their homes. He captured the grief of farmers watching their fields burn, as per council mandate. Now nothing could be left behind that might be used as a foothold for return. He filmed the moment when the last human ship crossed back into soul space, and the massive quantum barrier activated behind them. It was beautiful in a horrible way. Waves of light cascaded across the boundary of their system, forming a wall that stretched in every direction. Energy patterns danced and swirled. The Council had spent enormous resources creating this prison. They wanted to make sure humanity stayed contained. On Earth, billions watched the feeds from the returning colonists. The stories of loss, of abandonment, of being cast out like criminals. Anger spread like wildfire. Grief turned to rage. Rage turned to determination. Tajin gave one final speech from Earth, broadcast to every human settlement across Sol. They have judged us unworthy. They have locked us away like animals. But we are not animals. We are human. We adapt. We overcome. We survive. They think this barrier will hold us. They think we will forget the stars. They are wrong. Broadcast ended, but his words echoed. In government chambers, scientists and engineers began meeting in secret. On Mars, military strategists drew up plans that would take decades to execute. In the asteroid belt, construction began on facilities that had no official designation or purpose. Haywan stood on the observation deck of the military headquarters, looking out at Earth below. She was 53 years old. She might not live to see humanity free again, but her children would. Her grandchildren would Ki-Wu organized his recordings into an archive. He labeled it the Exile Chronicles and made sure copies were distributed everywhere. Future generations needed to remember this. Not just the pain, but the injustice. Not just the loss, but the reason to fight. The Council thought they had ended humanity's expansion. They thought the problem was solved. They returned to their comfortable lives, confident that the aggressive young species was contained. They stopped watching. They stopped worrying. That was their first mistake, in the shadows of Sol. In the secret places where surveillance could not reach, humanity began to build. Not the same ships. Not the same technology. Something new. Something the Council could never expect. The barrier was meant to keep them in. But prisons only work if the inmates accept their captivity. Humanity did not accept. The exile had begun. But so had something else. Something patient and quiet and unstoppable. The Council had given them time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to become something more than they had been 300 years earlier. Humanity had barely reached their own moon. 200 years earlier, they had spread across dozens of systems. Now locked in their cradle, it would learn to break cages. The shadows deepened around Sol, and in those shadows humanity sharpened its teeth. 50 years had passed since the barrier went up. Director Wu Jin walked through the facility, carved deep inside the asteroid psyche, his footsteps echoing on metal floors. Workers nodded as he passed, but no one spoke. Security here was absolute. What they were building would change everything. But only if the Council never learned about it. He reached the observation window and stopped. Below him, in a chamber the size of a small city, the prototype hung suspended in magnetic fields. It didn't look like a ship. It was black, smooth, with curves that seemed wrong somehow, as if the shape hurt to look at directly. Lights flickered across its surface in patterns that made no sense. "Status?" Ujin asked without turning around. Nari appeared beside him, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. She had been working for 72 hours straight again. "We're ready for the test. Dongha is already in the cockpit. All systems are green." "Tell me again how it works," Wu Jin said. He had heard the explanation a dozen times, but he still didn't quite understand. Nari smiled. She always liked explaining her work. Normal ships move through space. They push against it, or warp it, or tunnel through it. But space is just one layer of reality. Underneath, there's quantum foam, the substrate where reality itself comes from. We don't move through space. We step outside it entirely. Void phase, Wu Jin said. Exactly. When we activate the drive, the ship exists in multiple states at once. It's here, it's not here, it's everywhere and nowhere. To an outside observer, it just vanishes. But the pilot can still navigate. They can see our dimension, like looking through water. Can emerge anywhere. And the barrier? Barrier blocks normal space. It's very good at that. But it can't block something that isn't in normal space. We'll pass through it like it doesn't exist, because to us, it won't. Wu Jin nodded slowly. If this works, everything changes. If this works, Nari said, we stop being prisoners. They went down to the control center. Technicians sat at dozens of stations, monitoring every system on the prototype ship. Dongha's voice came through speakers, calm and professional. He had been a test pilot before the exile. He'd flown the last evacuation ship out of the Kepler colony. He knew what was at stake. Prototype Void 1, ready for activation, Dongha reported. Copy that, Void 1, the flight director said. You are clear to activate Void phase on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The ship shimmered. That was the only word for it. The black surface seemed to vibrate, and then it was gone. Not destroyed, not moved, just gone. The magnetic fields held nothing. The sensors showed nothing. Void 1, report status, the director said, her voice tight with tension. Silence. Then, crackling through static, I'm here, or not here. This is incredible. Can see the facility, but it's like looking through fog. Everything has this blue glow. I'm reading quantum fluctuations everywhere. Can you navigate? Yes. Controls are responsive. I'm moving toward the exit tunnel. They watched the empty space where the ship had been. Sensors tracked nothing. Cameras showed nothing. For all anyone could tell, Dongha had simply ceased to exist. Approaching the barrier, Dongha said, I can see it. It's like a wall of light from this side. It's passing through now. In the control room, nobody breathed. The barrier had been tested 1,000 times. Nothing got through. Nothing. I'm through, Dongha said, his voice filled with wonder. I'm outside. I'm actually outside Seoul. The council barrier is behind me. I'm setting course for Alpha Centauri. Wu Jin felt his knees go weak. It worked. After 50 years of being caged, after 50 years of humiliation, they had found a way out. And the council had no idea. Continue to target, he ordered. Run the full test. We need to know the range and stability. 3 days later, Dongha returned. The ship shimmered back into existence in the assembly chamber, exactly where it had left. He emerged from the cockpit grinning like a child, for light years there and back. The council sensors never even flickered. As far as they know, nothing left Seoul. The celebration was quiet but intense. People hugged and cried and laughed. Nari just sat down and slept for 16 hours straight. But Wu Jin was already planning the next steps. One prototype was interesting. Fleet was power. Over the next months, production ramped up. Hidden facilities across Seoul began building void ships. In the asteroid belt, in the clouds of Jupiter, beneath the ice of Europa, in the valleys of Mars, humanity had learned to work in secret. The council had taught them that, but they didn't just build ships, they built bases. Wu Jin sent out scout teams to find locations the council would never think to look. Dark matter clouds where sensors didn't work, rogue planets drifting between stars, even other dimensions, parallel spaces that touched reality only lightly. Jamin led the first colony mission. 20 ships, 500 people, destination, a dark matter region near the galactic core. They would be invisible, unreachable, unknown. From there, they would watch, they would learn, they would grow. The instructions were clear. Leave no trace. Take no unnecessary risks. Observe the council and report everything. Most importantly, be patient. This wasn't about quick revenge. This was about survival and eventual freedom. Back in Seoul, life went on. The barrier remained. The council checked on humanity once every few years, just cursory scans to make sure they were still contained. They saw peaceful settlements, civilian ships moving between planets, scientific research, everything normal, everything expected. They didn't see the void ships. They couldn't. The ships existed in a phase of reality the council didn't know existed. Humanity had found a loophole in the universe itself. Nari continued improving the technology. Second-generation drives were faster, more stable. Third generation could carry larger ships. By the time she released the fourth-generation design, humanity could move entire stations through void space. Wu Jin aged. His hair went gray, then white. He moved slower, thought more carefully. But he never stopped planning. Every week, reports came in from the hidden colonies. Observations of council fleet movements, notes on alien technologies, details about political tensions between the elder races. One report particularly interested him. The Vithray and the Luminids were in a quiet conflict over resource rights in the Outer Rim. The council was not as unified as they pretended. They had their own problems, their own conflicts. That was useful information. We're playing the long game, he told his staff during a meeting. The council thinks we're contained. They think we're broken. Every year they don't check on us is a year we get stronger. Eventually, we'll be so far ahead that they won't be able to stop us, even if they want to. How long? Someone asked. Wu Jin smiled. As long as it takes, we're not in a hurry. Rush now, we lose everything. Wait, plan, prepare. And we win. 50 years became 100. The first generation of exiled humans died. Their children grew up hearing stories of the stars they could never see, or so the council thought. In reality, thousands of young humans now lived in the hidden colonies, working on projects their grandparents could only dream of. Deng Ha trained new pilots. The original prototype ship was now in a museum in the dark matter colony, honored as the vessel that proved humanity could not be caged. He was old now, his hands not as steady, but he still flew sometimes. Just two. Remember what it felt like to be the first human to break the barrier. Nari became a legend. Children studied her equations in school. Engineers treated her papers like holy texts. She continued working until she was 90, finally retiring to a small station near Neptune. But even in retirement, she consulted on new projects, always pushing the technology further. The void ships became void fleets. Hundreds, then thousands. Humanity didn't just escape their prison. They built an empire in the shadows, in the spaces between spaces, dimensions the council never imagined existed. And they watched, always watching. Learning the council's routines, their weaknesses, their secrets, the elder races had grown comfortable, complacent. They ruled the galaxy with ancient authority, never questioning their right to do so. But in the void, in the dark, humanity prepared. Not for war, not yet. But for the day when they would step back into the light and show the galaxy what exile had taught them. That day was coming. The shadows were deep, but eventually, even the longest night must end. Captain Jae Sung stood on the bridge of his void ship, watching the Vethray mining colony through sensors that shouldn't exist. His ship was currently out of phase with normal reality, invisible and intangible. The aliens below had no idea humanity was watching them. They never did. Mark this location, he told his tactical officer. 3 frigates, standard patrol pattern. They rotate every 16 hours. Marked, came the response. That's the 47th military installation we've cataloged this month, Jae-Sung nodded. 100 years had passed since the exile. In that time, humanity had built a network of observation posts across the entire galaxy. They watched everything. Trade routes, military bases, political meetings, resource deposits. Every piece of information was sent back to the analysis centers hidden in the dark. Matter clouds, his mission was simple. Observe and record. Never interfere. Never reveal. Humanity wasn't ready for open conflict, but knowledge was its own kind of power. The more they learned about the Council, the more options they would have when the time came. Captain, we're receiving a priority signal from Intelligence Officer Biora, the communications officer said. She wants to conference immediately. Jae-Sung moved to the private communication chamber. Biora's face appeared on the screen, and she looked troubled. She was stationed at Analysis Center 3, where teams of experts studied everything the scout ships sent back. I need you to investigate something, Biora said without preamble. We've been tracking Council activities for decades now, and I've noticed a pattern. Every time a younger species shows significant technological progress, something happens to them. What kind of something? Different things. Sometimes they're offered council membership, and their best scientists mysteriously disappear into council research programs. Sometimes they face sudden economic problems that force them to accept council aid, which comes with conditions. Sometimes there are accidents. Ships explode. Planets have environmental disasters. Always just enough to break their momentum. Soon felt cold. You think the council is actively suppressing advancement? I don't think I know. I have data going back 3,000 years. 27 species showed promise. All 27 were either absorbed into the council's structure or destroyed. Humanity would have been number 28. Where do you need me to go? Biora sent him coordinates. The Korath have a black site here. It's not on any official records, but I've tracked supply ships going there for 50 years. I need to know what's inside. The black site was a small moon orbiting a dead planet in an unclaimed system. Perfect place to hide something. Jason took his ship there and spent 3 weeks watching. Supply ships came twice a month. No other traffic. Heavy security for a place that didn't officially exist. He sent a stealth drone in. A tiny thing barely larger than his hand that could phase in and out of void space. It took pictures, recorded sounds, mapped the interior. What it found made Jae-sung's hands shake with rage. Prison cells. Hundreds of them, holding aliens from dozens of species. All of them scientists, engineers, or political leaders from younger races. The council wasn't just suppressing progress. They were kidnapping anyone who might threaten their control. Get me Hyen-woo, Jae-sung ordered. Hyen-woo was humanity's most dangerous asset. He had volunteered for surgical alteration, changing his appearance to blend with alien populations. He had spent 20 years living among the Korath, learning their language, their culture, their secrets. To them, he was just another worker in their hive cities. When Hyen-woo's secure channel opened, Jae-sung briefed him on the black site. I need confirmation. Can you access Korath records from inside? Give me a week, Hyen-woo said. 8 days later, the data came through. Not just confirmation. A complete database. The black site was one of 12 across the galaxy. The council had been running these prisons for millennia. Political dissidents, innovative scientists, charismatic leaders who might unite younger species. Anyone who posed a threat simply vanished. But that wasn't all. Hyen-woo found something else. Archives of council meetings going back thousands of years. Minutes that showed the council's true purpose. They weren't protecting the galaxy. They were controlling it. Every species that joined the council gave up their sovereignty. Every world that accepted council help became dependent. The elder races weren't benevolent guides. They were jailers. Humanity was exiled because we wouldn't submit, Biora said when she reviewed the data. We expanded too fast, questioned too much, refused to accept their authority. They couldn't control us, so they locked us away. We need to spread this information, Jae-sung said. The galaxy needs to know what the council really is. Not yet, Biora said. If we reveal ourselves now, we show our hand. We need more leverage. Keep observing. Keep recording. When we finally act, we need overwhelming evidence. So they watched and documented. But Jae-sung couldn't just observe anymore. None of them could. When his scouts spotted a Luminid patrol about to discover a small colony of refugees from a suppressed species, he made a decision. Phase us in, he ordered. Weapons ready. The void ship materialized between the patrol and the colony. The Luminid sensors went crazy. A ship that appeared from nowhere, technology they didn't recognize. Before they could react, Jae-sung's weapons disabled their engines. Leave them alone, he broadcast on all frequencies. There are forces in this galaxy that protect the weak. Forces you cannot see or stop. Leave and live. The Luminid patrol retreated. The colony was saved. They never learned who helped them. But word spread through underground networks. Something was out there. Someone was fighting back against the council. Jae-sung knew he would be in trouble for revealing humanity's existence. even anonymously. But Bora surprised him. "Do it again," she said. "Carefully, selectively. Let the council wonder. Let them worry. Ghosts in their perfect system." Other captains began doing the same. Supply convoys heading to council prison sites mysteriously vanished. Surveillance stations monitoring younger species suffered strange malfunctions. Ships carrying confiscated technology from suppressed worlds never reached their destinations, the council noticed. How could they not? But they couldn't explain it. Their sensors showed nothing. Their patrols found no enemy. The attacks were random, unpredictable, and completely untraceable. In council chambers, arguments broke out. The Vethray blamed the Luminids. The Luminids suspected the Korith. Ancient alliances began to fracture under suspicion. They never considered humanity. Why would they? Humanity was locked away in Sol, powerless and forgotten. Meanwhile, the freed prisoners and rescued colonies told stories. Whispers spread through cantinas and trade posts. There was someone out there. Someone in the void. Someone who helped those who couldn't help themselves. "They're calling us the Void Watchers," Hyenwu reported with amusement. "There are stories about mysterious ships that appear and disappear. Some species think we're a myth. Others think we're ancient guardians. A few think we're the Council's own enforcers gone rogue." "Let them think whatever they want," Biora said, "as long as they don't think we're human." But eventually, someone would figure it out. Jae-sung knew that. Every action left traces, no matter how careful they were. The question was whether humanity would be ready. When the truth came out, he looked at the tactical display showing council space. Thousands of systems. Trillions of beings. All living under the council's thumb, most not even knowing they were oppressed. The younger species thought the council was protecting them. The elder races thought they were maintaining order. But it was all a lie. 150 years, Biora said during their next conference. That's how long we've been gathering evidence. The archives are complete. We know their crimes. We know their weaknesses. We know which species are suffering under their rule, and which would rebel if given the chance. So what happens now? Jae-sung asked. Biora smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Now we wake up the old heroes. Admiral Haewon is still alive. Barely. Her granddaughter Yuna has taken command of the military, and Tajin's grandson is about to do something very dramatic. He's requesting an audience with the council, as the representative of humanity, in person. In their chamber, Jae-sung felt his heart race. They'll never allow it. They won't have a choice, because when he makes the request, 10,000 void ships are going to decloak simultaneously over every major council world. Not firing. Not threatening. Just present. And the galaxy is going to learn that humanity was never really gone. That's insane. It's necessary. 150 years of patience. 150 years of preparation. The time for hiding is over. Jae-sung looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of humans waited for the signal. Hidden bases prepared to reveal themselves. Void ships moved into position. Everything they had built, everything they had sacrificed, was about to be tested. The whispers in the void were about to become a roar. Supreme Commander Yuna stood in the command center of Flagship Unity, watching the countdown timer. 3 minutes until Operation Daybreak. Around her, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Outside, 9,999 other void ships waited in dark space, invisible to every sensor the council possessed. She touched the small photo she kept in her pocket. Her grandmother, Admiral Haewon, had died 2 months ago at the age of 173. She had lived long enough to know this day was coming. Her last words had been simple. Make them see what they created. 2 minutes, the tactical officer announced. Yuna opened a channel to all human forces. This is Supreme Commander Yuna, to all void ships. We have waited 150 years for this moment. Our grandparents were exiled. Our parents grew up in shadows. We have lived as ghosts. Today, we remind the galaxy that humanity still exists. Remember your orders. We are here to reveal the truth, not to start a war. Phase into normal space on my mark.
Oh.
She took a deep breath. This was it. No turning back. 1 minute. Across the galaxy, human ships moved into position. Over every council homeworld, over military bases and trade stations, over the council chamber itself, all waiting for the signal. 30 seconds. Yuna thought about what this meant. If they failed, humanity would be hunted. If they succeeded, everything changed. The council would never forgive them for this embarrassment, but forgiveness wasn't the goal. Justice was 10 seconds. 9-8. The countdown reached 0. All ships phase in. Now, 10,000 void ships materialized simultaneously. Over Vethray Prime, crystal cities reflected the sudden appearance of 200 human vessels. Over the Luminid homeworld, energy beings panicked as ships emerged from nowhere in perfect formation. Over Korath hive worlds, 1,000 voices screamed in confusion, and above the council chamber, 500 ships appeared in a sphere formation, boxing in the massive station. Chaos erupted across council space. Every sensor, every scanner, every warning system went wild. The elder races had spent thousands of years believing they were supreme. Nothing surprised them anymore. This surprised them. In the council chamber, 12 beings sat frozen in shock. Ambassador Sujin's transmission came through on every channel, impossible to block or ignore. "Honored Council," she said, her voice calm and clear. "Humanity greets you. We have returned." The Vithray representative tried to speak, but Sujin continued. 150 years ago, you judged us. You called us dangerous. You locked us away. You believed your barrier could hold us. You were wrong. Images began broadcasting across every screen in council space. The black sites, the prisons, the suppressed species, the confiscated technologies, the manipulated economies, the assassinated leaders. 150 years of evidence, all carefully documented, all undeniable. "The galaxy believes you are protectors," Sujin said, "but you are jailers. You have imprisoned civilizations for millennia. You have stolen innovation. You have crushed hope. And you have done it all while claiming to maintain peace." On Vethray Prime, civilians watched the broadcasts in horror. On Luminid stations, energy patterns flickered with confusion. On Korath hive worlds, the collective consciousness rippled with doubt. The evidence was overwhelming. It couldn't be faked. Not on this scale. The Luminid Elder tried to cut the transmission. Nothing happened. Humanity had been studying council technology for a century and a half. They knew every system, every weakness, every back door. "We could destroy you," Sujin continued. "Our ships surround your worlds. Our weapons are powered. But we are not here for revenge. We are here for justice. The galaxy deserves to know what you are, and you deserve to face consequences for your crimes." In the command center, Yuna watched the tactical displays. Council military forces were scrambling, trying to respond. But humanity had already infiltrated their systems. Defense platforms went offline. Communication networks failed. Weapons couldn't get target locks. "Show them," Yuna ordered. Across the galaxy, video feeds showed council military installations shutting down. Not destroyed, just disabled. Humanity proved they could have done so much worse. But they had chosen restraint. On the council chamber station, Tajin too walked through the halls. He looked like his grandfather, had his grandfather's steady gaze. Guards tried to stop him, but their weapons wouldn't fire. Electronic locks opened for him as if welcoming an honored guest. He entered the chamber where his grandfather had pleaded for humanity's survival. The 12 council members looked at him with something they hadn't felt in thousands of years. Fear. "I am Tajin too," he said. "My grandfather stood here and asked for mercy. You gave him exile. He asked for fairness. You gave him a cage. He asked for a chance. You gave him contempt." He walked to the center of the chamber, the same spot his grandfather had stood. "You wanted us contained because we wouldn't submit, because we asked questions, because we grew too fast for your comfort. You were afraid of us. So you tried to break us, You violated the quarantine, the Vethray said, trying to maintain authority. Your presence here is illegal. Tajin too laughed. Illegal? You kidnap scientists? You suppress innovation? You rig economies? You run secret prisons? And you lecture me about law? The Korath shifted uneasily. The Luminid dimmed. They had no defense. The evidence was everywhere, being broadcast to every species in the galaxy. I'm not here to ask for anything, Taijin Tu said. I'm here to tell you what happens next. The younger species are watching. They're learning the truth about you. Some will want revenge. Some will just want freedom. But all of them will want change. Cannot destroy the council, the Vethray said. We maintain order. Without us, there will be chaos, Taijin Tu said quietly. Without you, there will be justice. And we're going to make sure of it. Signals went out across the galaxy. Human operatives emerged from hiding. The freed prisoners from the black sites told their stories. Species that had been suppressed for centuries began speaking up. Young races that had lived in fear began organizing. The council tried to respond. They ordered their military to attack the human ships. The orders went out. Nothing happened. Yuna's teams had spent decades preparing for this moment. Every council military system had been compromised. Ships couldn't fire. Stations couldn't defend. The council was helpless. This is impossible, the Luminid said. How did you become so advanced? You were primitive when we exiled you. You gave us 150 years with nothing to do but improve, Taijin Tu said. You gave us a common enemy. You gave us motivation. You gave us time? Prisons are only effective if the inmates can't learn to pick the locks. On Earth, old Kiwu watched the broadcasts from his retirement home. He was 190 years old, his body failing, but his mind still sharp. He had documented the exile. Now he was documenting the return. Tears streamed down his face. Across the galaxy, younger species began acting. Protests erupted on council worlds. Trade networks controlled by the elder races collapsed as younger species refused to cooperate. Military units composed of non-council species defected. The structure that had held for thousands of years began cracking. The council is dissolved, Sujin announced. In its place, we propose a galactic assembly. Every species gets a voice. Every civilization gets representation. No more elder races ruling over younger ones. No more suppression. No more secrets. You cannot make that decision, the Vithray protested. Or not, Sujin said. The galaxy is... We're just giving them the opportunity. Within days, the vote began. Every species in the galaxy was asked, do you want the council to continue, or do you want change? The result was overwhelming. Thousands of civilizations voted for change. Only the elder races and their closest allies voted to maintain the old system. The council tried to resist. They tried to rally support. They tried to paint humanity as conquerors. But the evidence was too strong. The truth was too clear. They had ruled through deception and fear. Now both were gone. Yuna watched as council military forces stood down. Some units defected. Some simply went home. Without the threat of violence, the council had no power. There were just 12 old beings who had gotten too comfortable with authority. Phase back to void space, Yuna ordered. Leave skeleton crews in normal space to maintain the peace. Everyone else, return to base. Operation Daybreak is complete. The human ships began disappearing again, phasing out of normal reality. But enough remained visible to remind everyone humanity was watching, and they wouldn't allow the old tyranny to return. Tajin left the council chamber. He didn't look back. His grandfather had walked out of here broken and defeated. He walked out victorious, not through violence. Through truth, the galaxy would never be the same. Chancellor Yunha stood at the window of her office in Assembly Station, looking out at the massive structure that floated in neutral space. Ships from hundreds of species came and went, representatives arriving for another session. It had been 50 years since the council fell. 50 years of building something better. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was, but it was fair. She thought about how she had gotten here. She had been a diplomat's assistant when Operation Daybreak happened. Barely 25 years old, eager and idealistic. Now, she was 75, her hair gray, her face lined with the stress of leading a government that represented thousands of worlds. But she wouldn't change it for anything. A notification chimed. Kiwoo was here for their weekly meeting. She smiled. He insisted on coming in person, even though he was nearly 250 years old and had every right to rest. But Kiwoo never rested. He said he had spent too much time documenting tragedy. Now he wanted to document success. "Come in," she said. Ki-Woo entered with his ever-present recording device. He moved slowly, aided by a walking frame, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Chancellor, how goes the grand experiment?" "Better than expected," Yunha said, gesturing for him to sit. "The Vithray delegation actually voted with the Younger Species Coalition yesterday. First time in 2 years. Progress," Kiwoo said, settling into his chair with a sigh. Painful, slow progress. The elder races are learning to share power. That's not easy for beings who ruled for millennia. No, it's not. But they're trying. Most of them, anyway. Yunha pulled up a report on her screen. The Luminids are still causing problems. They keep trying to manipulate votes through economic pressure. We caught them offering favorable trade terms to smaller species in exchange for voting their way. Old habits, Kiwoo said. What did you do? Exposed it publicly. Imposed sanctions. Made it clear that kind of behavior won't be tolerated. The Luminids are angry, but they backed down. Kiwoo nodded approvingly. Transparency. That's what makes this work. The council operated in secret. You operate in the open. Because of you, Yunha said. You taught us that documentation matters. Truth matters. Everything we do is recorded and made public. Every vote, every decision, every debate, any citizen of any species can access the records. It makes corruption almost impossible. Almost, Kiwoo said with a dry smile. People will always find ways to cheat, but you make it harder. They talked for an hour about the challenges ahead. The Korath were struggling to adapt to individualism after millennia of hive mind thinking. Several younger species were advancing so rapidly that it scared their neighbors. Resource disputes kept emerging over who had rights to unclaimed systems. Every day brought new problems. But that was okay. Problems meant growth. Conflict meant engagement. The old council had maintained peace through suppression. The assembly maintained peace through discussion and compromise. It was messier, louder, and infinitely better. I have a surprise for you, Yunha said. Come with me. She helped Kiwoo to the transport pad, and they phased through the station to the memorial wing. It had been under construction for 2 years. Today it opened to the public. The memorial chamber was enormous, filled with holographic displays and physical artifacts. At the center stood a statue of Tejin, the original ambassador who had witnessed humanity's exile. Around him, images cycled through the history, the evacuation, the barrier, the secret development, the revelation, the fall of the council. Memorial, Yuna said. Every species contributed something. The Vithray donated crystal displays. The Luminids provided energy sculptures. Even the Korath sent artifacts from their hive archives. This is a joint memorial, honoring not just humanity's struggle, but everyone who suffered under the council. Kiwoo wiped tears from his eyes. I recorded the exile. I never thought I'd live to see this. You didn't just record it. You preserved it. Without your archives, we couldn't have proved the council's crimes. You're as much a hero as any soldier. They walked through the displays. Images of Nari and her equations. Models of the first void ship. Testimonies from the freed prisoners. Letters from colonists during the evacuation. Everything preserved. Everything remembered. History matters, Kiwoo said. If we forget, we repeat. This ensures we remember. Meanwhile, at the Void Academy on Luna, Nari gave one of her rare lectures. She was 182 years old, officially retired, but students kept asking her to speak. Today's class had representatives from 40 different species, all studying void phase technology. The equations are just mathematics, she told them. Any of you could have discovered them. What matters is what you do with discovery. I could have kept this technology secret, made humanity powerful while others remained weak. That would have made us the new council. A young Vethray student raised a crystal appendage. Then why share it? Because power kept secret becomes tyranny, Nari said. Power shared becomes civilization. The council hoarded knowledge. They suppressed innovation. They stayed strong by keeping others weak. We chose differently. We shared our greatest advantage freely. But doesn't that make you vulnerable? Asked a Luminid student. If everyone has void ships, humanity loses its edge. Nari smiled. True strength isn't about having advantages over others. It's about having enough courage to level the playing field. Besides, we didn't share everything at once. We established the academy where species learn together. We created guidelines for responsible use. We made void technology a tool for exploration, not domination. She pulled up star charts showing the new frontier. Because we shared, we've achieved more than we ever could alone. Multi-species crews exploring galaxies we couldn't reach before. Joint research projects advancing science faster than ever. Trade networks that benefit everyone. That's worth more than any military advantage. The lecture ended with students from different species working together on void phase calculations. Nari watched them collaborate, sharing ideas freely, helping each other. This was what she had hoped for. Not human supremacy. Partnership at the Peacekeeping Command Center, Director Dong Ha reviewed deployment schedules. He was 170 years old, the original test pilot who had first broken through the Council's barrier. Now he led a multi-species force dedicated to preventing oppression. Report from Sector 18, an officer said. The Kalanth government is showing authoritarian tendencies. They're restricting information access and arresting dissidents. Dong Ha studied the data. Send an observer team. Multi-species composition. They investigate, document, and report. If the Kalanth are violating assembly principles, we intervene. Intervene how? Same as always. First, diplomatic pressure. Economic sanctions. Aid to opposition groups. If that fails, we can disable their military capacity and force negotiations, but only as a last resort. We're peacekeepers, not conquerors. The officer nodded. Some species are calling us the new council. Let them. As long as our actions are transparent and justified, criticism doesn't worry me. The difference between us and the council is simple. They operated in secret for their own benefit. We operate openly for everyone's benefit. When we make mistakes, we admit them and fix them. That's accountability. Angha thought about his first flight through the barrier. How terrifying and exhilarating it had been. He had been just a pilot following orders. Now he commanded a force that protected billions. The journey from prisoner to peacekeeper still amazed him. Later that week, Assembly Station hosted the anniversary celebration. 200 years since the exile. 50 years since the Assembly's founding. Beings from across the galaxy gathered to remember and to celebrate. Tajin, too, gave the keynote speech. He was 83 now, his grandfather's age when humanity was exiled. My grandfather stood before the council and asked for mercy. They gave him none. Today, we do not ask. We build together. He gestured to the crowd, a mix of hundreds of species. The council feared diversity. They saw different species as problems to control. We see them as partners in building something greater. Every species brings unique perspectives. Every culture offers valuable insights. Our differences make us stronger, not weaker. Yunha stood beside him, watching the reactions. Some elder race representatives looked uncomfortable. Good, they should be. They were learning that authority must be earned, not assumed. We claimed the void. Tajin too continued. Not for ourselves, but for everyone. The darkness between stars was where humanity hid and grew. Now it's where all of us explore together. New galaxies, new possibilities, new futures. The celebration continued for days. Ships from across the galaxy came to participate. Former council worlds mingled with younger species. Former enemies shared meals and stories. It wasn't perfect unity. Arguments happened. Tensions remained. But people were trying. On the final day, Yunha met with a group of young leaders from recently discovered species. They were nervous about joining the assembly, afraid of being overwhelmed by older, more powerful civilizations. "I understand your fear," Yunha said. "Humanity felt the same way. We were young, ambitious, and terrified of being controlled. The council tried to suppress us because of that fear. We don't. Your voices matter as much as anyone's. Your votes count equally. Your rights are protected.